Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So we will formally begin our webinar with the recitation of the Holy Quran, and I request Mohtaram Mahmood Kondil Sahib to please recite the verses of the Holy Quran.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Can you hear me, sir?
Ji, we can.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I will recite the Surah Al-Layl. It's a chapter 92. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن لنا للآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلاها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى ولسوف يرضى. اب میں ان آیات کا اردو ترجمہ بیان فرمودہ حضرت خلیفۃ المسیح الرابع رضی اللہ تعالیٰ عنہ بیان کرتا ہوں۔ اللہ کے نام کے ساتھ جو بے انتہا رحم کرنے والا، بن مانگے دینے والا اور بار بار رحم کرنے والا ہے۔ قسم ہے رات کی جب وہ ڈھانپ لے، اور دن کی جب وہ روشن ہو جائے، اور اس کی جو اس نے نر اور مادہ پیدا کیے۔ تمہاری کوشش یقیناً الگ الگ ہے، پس وہ جس نے راہ حق میں دیا اور تقوی اختیار کیا اور بہترین نیکی کی تصدیق کی تو ہم اسے ضرور کشادگی عطا کریں گے۔ اور جہاں تک اس کا تعلق ہے جس نے بخل کیا اور بے پرواہی کی اور بہترین نیکی کی تکذیب کی تو ہم اسے ضرور تنگی میں ڈال دیں گے، اور اس کا مال جب تباہ ہو جائے گا اس کے کسی کام نہ آئے گا۔ یقیناً ہدایت دینا ہم پر بہرحال فرض ہے، اور یقیناً انجام بھی لازماً ہمارے تصرف میں ہے اور آغاز بھی۔ بس میں تمہیں اس آگ سے ڈراتا ہوں جو شعلہ زن ہے، اس میں کوئی داخل نہیں ہوگا مگر سخت بدبخت، وہ جس نے جھٹلایا اور پیٹھ پھیر لی، جبکہ سب سے بڑھ کر متقی اس سے ضرور بچایا جائے گا۔ جو اپنا مال دیتا ہے پاکیزگی چاہتے ہوئے، اور اس پر کسی کا احسان نہیں کہ جس کا اس کی طرف سے بدلہ دیا جا رہا ہو، یہ محض اپنے رب اعلیٰ کی خوشنودی چاہتے ہوئے خرچ کرتا ہے، اور وہ ضرور راضی ہو جائے گا۔ جزاکم اللہ وحسن۔
Jazakallah. Alhamdulillah, Sahab. Now I request Harun Shakur Sahab to please present the English translation of these verses.
I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. By the night when it covers up, and by the day when it shines forth, and by the creation of the male and the female, surely your strivings are diverse. Then as for him who gives forth the cause of Allah and is righteous, and testifies to the truth of what is right, we will provide for him every facility for good. But as for him who is niggardly and is disdainfully indifferent, and rejects what is right, we will make easy for him the path to distress, and his wealth shall not avail him when he perishes. Surely it is for us to guide, and to us belong the hereafter as well as the present world. So I warn you of a blazing fire. None shall enter it but the most wicked one, who rejects the truth and turns his back on it. But the righteous one shall be kept away from it, who gives his wealth that he may be purified, and not because he owes a favor to anyone which is to be repaid, but solely to seek the pleasure of his Lord, the Most High. Surely will he be well pleased with him. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all of the respected attendees. Jazakallah for joining this webinar. Our intent in this webinar today is to collectively deepen our understanding of this blessed and heavenly institution that was established by the Prophet of this time, Sayyidina al-Masih alayhi salatu wassalam, through divine knowledge. I know we have a mixed audience. Some of you, mashallah, have already taken the step forward and are already part of this divine nizam, and there are others who are exploring it and seeking to join. So our focus today, inshallah ta'ala, is going to be to offer some food for thought to both Musian as well as the prospective Musian, inshallah ta'ala. I'm joined by our esteemed guests today, Mohtaram Murabbi Rizwan Khan Sahib, Mohtaram Murabbi Abdullah Dibba Sahib, and Mohtaram Masood Khan Sahib. And inshallah, we're going to have some panel discussions today in two segments. The first segment is going to focus on addressing the common hesitations and obstacles that members have shared with us. And in the second segment, we're going to dive into actually hearing some inspirational stories and testimonials from the members that the panelists will share with us. And at the same time, we would love to hear from the audience, from all of you as well, that if you have a story to share, that how Wasiyyat transformed your life, what blessings did you experience after becoming part of this divine nizam, we would love to hear from you as well. So at that time, once we get to the segment, we will inshallah ta'ala open it up. You can raise your hand and we can bring you on to for you to share your story. But before we get into the panel discussion, I want to start off by reminding all of us and collectively reflecting on the true purpose of Nizam-e Wasiyat and why this Nizam was established in the first place. So I'm going to read this excerpt from Malfuzat, uh, the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, in which Sayyidina Muslim has beautifully explained the true purpose and the objective behind establishing this heavenly institution. आप फरमाते हैं कि यकीनन याद रखो कि खुदा ताला के नज़दीक वही मोमिन और बैत में दाखिल होता है जो दीन को दुनिया पर मुकद्दम कर ले, जैसा कि वो बैत करते वक्त कहता है, अगर दुनिया की अगराज को मुकद्दम करता है तो वो इस इकरार को तोड़ता है और खुदा ताला के नज़दीक वो मुजरिम ठहरता है। बस इसी गरज से बस इसी गरज से ये इश्तिहार अलवसियत मैंने खुदा ताला के इज़्न से दिया है। सच्ची बात यही है, साल दीगर राह के मैदान हिसाब, लेकिन जबकि खुदा ताला की मतवातिर वही ने मुझ पर खोला कि वक्त करीब है और अजले मुकद्दर का इल्हाम हुआ, तो मैंने अल्लाह ताला ही के इशारे से ये इश्तिहार दिया कि ता आइंदा के लिए इशात दीन का सामान हो, कि ता आइंदा के लिए इशात दीन का सामान हो और ता लोगों को मालूम हो कि आमन्ना व सद्दकना कहने वालों की अमली हालत क्या है। यकीनन समझो कि जब तक इंसान की अमली हालत दुरुस्त ना हो, ज़बान कुछ चीज़ नहीं, ये निरी लाफ गज़ाफ है। The English translation is, surely remember that in the sight of God Almighty, He alone is a believer and enters the bath, who gives precedence to the faith over the world as he declares when he takes the bath. If he puts worldly interests first, he breaks his declaration and is deemed guilty in the sight of God. So I have issued this announcement, the will, with the permission of God for this very purpose. This is the truth. Sal digar ra ke medan hisab, the translation is, who knows what will happen next year. However, when the frequent revelations of God made it clear to me that the time was near and revelation of the decreed time came, then I made this announcement only upon the direction of Allah the Exalted, so that there may be means available for the propagation of the faith in the future, and so that people may know the practical condition of those who say we believe and testify to the truth. Know with certainty that unless the practical condition of a person is upright, what is said verbally means nothing. So, from this saying of Sayyidina Hazrat Masih Wasallam, it is very clear that the purpose of Wasiyat is twofold. Number one, to create means for the propagation of Islam and Ahmadiyyat. And number two, to provide a way for us to demonstrate that our verbal claims are not just mere claims, but are supported by our actions. So those are the two purposes that Hazrat Masih has mentioned in this saying. Now, the question becomes that how do we demonstrate that, right? How do we demonstrate that our actions are supported, our words are supported by actions? सो हज़रत मसीह मौद रिसाला वसीयत में फरमाते हैं कि जो लोग इस इलाही इंतज़ाम पर, यानी निज़ाम वसीयत पर, जो लोग इस इलाही इंतज़ाम पर इतला पाकर बिला तवक्कुफ़ इस फ़िक्र में पड़ते हैं कि 10वां हिस्सा कुल जायदाद का खुदा की राह में दें, बल्कि इससे भी ज़्यादा अपना जोश दिखलाते हैं, वो अपनी ईमानदारी पर मोहर लगा देते हैं। Those who have been informed of this divine scheme become anxious immediately and without hesitation, subscribe 1/10 of their property in the way of Allah. In fact, they even show greater fervor, set the seal on their faithfulness. इसी तरह आप फरमाते हैं कि इस वक्त के इम्तिहान से भी आला दर्जे के मुखलिस मुखलिस जिन्होंने दर हकीकत दीन को दुनिया पर मुकद्दम किया है, दूसरे लोगों से मुमताज़ हो जाएंगे और साबित हो जाएगा कि बैत का इकरार उन्होंने सच्चा करके दिखला दिया और अपना सिद्क जाहिर कर दिया। आप फरमाते हैं इस काम में, यानी निज़ाम वसीयत में शामिल होकर इस काम में सबकत दिखलाने वाले रास्तबाजों में शुमार किए जाएंगे और अब तक खुदा की उन पर रहमतें होंगी। In the will, the Prophet ﷺ writes that I feel that in the present day trials too, the faithful ones of the highest order, who have in fact given precedence to faith over worldliness, will stand distinguished from others, and it shall be proven that they have fulfilled their pledge of Bai'at and established their bona fides. Those who excel in this matter will be counted among the righteous and forever, and always shall they be the recipients of divine blessings. So, this blessed Nizam really becomes a practical way for us to fulfill our pledge of Bai'at. And it really becomes a means for us to earn the distinction in the sight of Allah Ta'ala and distinguish ourselves in the sight of Allah Ta'ala as true mu'mineen. That's the intent of Wasiyyat, that's the purpose of Wasiyyat. And another important aspect that Khulafai Ahmadiyyat have highlighted that we want to dive into in this webinar also is this aspect that Nizam-e Wasiyyat becomes a means for Islah-e Nafs, the reformation of our spirituality, the reformation of our souls. And that's the perfect segue into our panel discussion now. So I want to get into that now. I want to welcome our respected guests, both Murabbiyan. Murabbi Rizwan Khan Sahib is currently serving as a missionary in Chicago Jamaat, as well as he's serving as the Qaid Tarbiyat in National Majlis Ansarullah. And we have Murabbi Abdullah Dibba Sahib, who's serving as the Sadr Majlis Khudam al Ahmadiyya. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to both Murabbiyan. Jazakallah for joining us and taking time.
Walaikum assalam, jazakallah.
Walaikum assalam.
So this is the first question that I want to bring up, and this is by far the most common question, hesitation that members bring up, and this notion that, I'm not at a spiritual level that is worthy of joining Nizam-e Wasiyyat, and this notion that I need to work on myself, I need to get better, I need to get rid of some habits before I really become worthy of joining Nizam-e Wasiyyat. So this is the first question, Murabbi Sahib, that I would like for you to shed some light on that. What is the answer to this?
Yeah, I think every single person who's done Wasiyyat has had the same thought and feeling that I'm not worthy, I'm not on that spiritual level. But the question really is that what did we do with that feeling? Because it is a good feeling to have. It's a natural expression of humility. But if that feeling makes a person do more goodness, then that means that feeling is coming from the angels of Allah. It's coming from a good source and it's having a good effect on us. But if that same feeling is holding someone else back from doing good, it's keeping them away from doing something that's a higher level of goodness, then we have to evaluate where it's taking us. So, this question of am I at that standard yet or not, if nobody thinks that they're at that standard. So we have to get some external opinion on this. So Huzur has said he wants 50% of earning members in the Jamaat to do Wasiyyat. Based on that, the Secretary of Wasaya and the office holders, they see who are those people in our local Jamaat who are of that standard that Huzur has given, that they're among those 50% of earning members who are at a good standard. And whenever they reach out to us individually, that's a show of good faith in us. They're telling us that we think that you're of that standard. Of course, you're not going to think you're of that standard, but we do believe in you. So that's something that can encourage us sometimes. So in my experience also, I remember that when Jamia opened, I didn't really have it in mind that I would go, but it was a local khadim who was older than me in the majlis who had told me that you should go. And so it was only because that person believed in me that then it occurred to me that maybe I should try. I'll send an application, and then after that, it's in someone else's hands. So a lot of times, if someone else believes in us, then that gives us the courage to do something good that we don't think that we're worthy of. So there, if our local office holders, our president or secretary Wasaya or Zayman Sarullah or Qaid Khudam al-Ahmadiyya have reached out to us individually, then that is a show of good faith. And that's something that we can take and say that, okay, I trust in Allah, I'll send the application, and then it's for Huzur to decide whether I'm really worthy or not.
Jazakallah. Maybe Abdullah Debbar sir, you would like to add
Thank
anything
you.
to that?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I think it's a common question. I agree. The same thoughts come to people's minds, young, old, anytime the conversation of wasiyat, but it's about what perception does that person have of wasiyat? What perception do they have of what spiritual advancement means? There's two ways of looking at it. The most common is, Jamaat wants you to pay more money than you're already paying. People think, well, I'm not strong enough in my faith to pay more. Or, well, as a Musi, you're expected to do certain things. And at this point, I don't think I'm good enough to do those. But we should look at Wasiyyat as actually a ladder that will get you to higher. As Murabbi Saab mentioned, you don't say, well, I don't offer tahajjud. When I start offering tahajjud, I'll just be comfortable and not want to get higher. So the more we get higher in spirituality, it doesn't make you relaxed. In fact, it makes you want to advance more and more. The Prophet ﷺ has mentioned this, that somebody who has experienced Allah, they're never satiated with that spirituality. He gave an example of somebody who drinks. When a person drinks, they want to keep drinking more and more because they love that level of intoxication. So at whatever level someone is, the willingness, and I would just assume here that the person means that they really want to get better in their spirituality, but they feel that they're not there yet. That's a good feeling. But wasiyat is one of those things that once you take that step, Hazrat Masih, again, Huzur mentioned, given this answer, that the person should start reading Risala al-Wasiyat. When you start reading Risala al-Wasiyat, you'll most likely realize that what I thought this was is different from what it actually is. So I would just say to that person, start reading the book, and then you realize that this is very inviting. It's not pushing anyone away.
Yeah, and that person, they can also imagine that once I've gotten all those good habits that I'm thinking of, then at that point, will I think that now I'm worthy of wasiyat? Because if they have made an improvement in themselves, then that person that they're imagining is going to be more humble than they are right now. So nothing's going to change when it comes to what Huzur has given us as a standard or what those local office holders are telling us, and our perception will just change. So, in that regard, that improvement that we think that we need to make before we become a Musi, that's not something that is like, you're mentioning is a standard that now a person reaches. They're going to say that, okay, now I'm worthy. Because then they're actually going to be in a different type of wrong. At least right now, they're humble. At that point, they're going to say, okay, I've gotten rid of these habits. Now I'm worthy of wasiyat. Now we're going to be worried that, okay, maybe this person isn't ready for wasiyat, if they actually think that now I'm worthy of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Murabbi Sahib, the concept which is important to hone in is that wasiyat is not a destination. It is a ladder to get us to that destination. And it's an ever that the spiritual journey is going to continue in this world and in the hereafter as well. And it reminds me that Khalifa Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala in Zawq-e Ibadat, in his Friday sermons, he was expanding on Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. And Hazur Rahimahullah Ta'ala mentioned that when we say Iyyaka na'budu, that we, oh Allah, you alone do we worship, that worship is not at a standard where it's supposed to be, from that right that is due to Allah Ta'ala. We're always constantly evolving and trying to, get better. So that's why we say Iyyaka nasta'een, that Allah Ta'ala, I'm trying. I want to be your abd, I want to be your servant, but I'm weak and I need your help, your hand to pull me and make me become what I want to become, right? The abd, the servant. So similarly, wasiyat is the same thing, that you take a step forward, you say that, okay, well, the prophet of the time has told me that this is the jihad of the time, right? This is the jihad of the time. So I'm taking my step forward, I'm getting into the battlefield. And then I'm praying to Allah Ta'ala, now you help me and then, make me overcome my weaknesses. But, staying outside of the battlefield and saying, okay, well, I'm part of this, I'm in it with you. We have to take a step forward. And then inshallah Allah Ta'ala will hold our hand. It's kind of like, the analogy that comes to mind is like gym. You want to get in shape, you gotta subscribe to the gym and then you gotta start working out, right? You can't be like sitting in your home and saying, hey, well, I want to first build some muscles and then I will subscribe to the gym and start going there. So Jazakallah for sharing those perspectives. The related question, a little, a variant of the previous hesitation that I've also heard, Murabbi Sahib, is that, this notion that Wasiyyat is a lifelong commitment, right? Members have this fear that will I be able to uphold this commitment for the rest of my life, right? And wouldn't it be better and wouldn't it be worse to fall short of that commitment than not making that commitment in the first place? So, what would be your response to that hesitation?
Yeah, that's definitely a legitimate hesitation in some ways because Hazrat Muslim Maud Rizal spoke about in Malaikatullah how a good initiative could come from Satan, where when a person first starts in their journey, then Satan tells them that, okay, do 8 rakat of tahajjud every day, or start fasting, voluntary fasting every day, that if it's good to do these things, then you should just give all your money away in the beginning. So, but he said that this is not the way of Allah Almighty. Allah Ta'ala is Rabb, Rabubiyyat. The angels of Allah, they always tell us gradually progress. They don't say just go all in at one time and then you're going to just get sick of it and tired and then leave everything. So Satan tells us to do good in a way that we're going to get tired of it. But the angels tell us to do good in a way that we're going to then fall in love with it and our heart will be open to it. So when it comes to Wasiyat, if our office holders who are concerned about this, they're working on this. If the national is reaching out to our Sadr, the local Wasaya secretary, they have our Chanda record in front of us. They know how our namaz situation is, are all of those things. And they have suggested to us, they're saying that, listen, we believe in you, that this wasiyat is a next step for you. And it's something that's going to open your heart to more goodness. You're not going to get sick of this. We see your track record. We see what your inclination is. And if you do this, then your heart is going to open to more goodness. Then that is an indication for us that this is a good initiative that is coming from the angels. There are people in that list of tajneed who your local Wasaya secretary is not reaching out to because, in his honest opinion, he does feel like that's too big of a jump. If that person does wasiyat, then maybe he won't be able to stay on it. Then it won't open his heart. It might actually close his heart. So one of the greatest blessings of wasiyat is that a person's heart is open to doing more financial sacrifice, doing more good. That's the greatest manifestation of Allah Ta'ala's rahimiyat, that it makes us want to do more good. So for a person who has that concern, again, we're all humble. But if these people are individually reaching out to us, then it shows that they believe in us and they believe that this is a natural progression, a natural next step. And if we take that small leap of faith, then I think we will find that our heart will open to doing more goodness rather than our heart being closed and us being overwhelmed and thinking that, okay, I'm not going to be able to hold on to this wasiyat.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid point, one of the stuff that you mentioned, that when you're at the starting point of anything and you imagine what success in that field looks like, right? You have to look at who's giving you that assurance. And like you mentioned, if your office bearers are giving you that assurance and they believe in you, Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam believes in you. He called members of the Jamaat and said, Allah Ta'ala has given me this promise and I'm opening it up. Whoever wants to make that leap of faith, and I'm telling you, the end of it is beautiful. I'm telling you, commit to this. He hasn't said that only if your finances are X, only if start off with good faith and you pray to Allah Ta'ala for Allah Ta'ala to guide you. We talk about istikhara, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and anything he's about to do, he prays and he does istikhara. What does that mean? If this is good for me, Allah, open up all doors for me. If it's not good for me, then you shut all doors for me, right? So when you're going, you don't have to figure it out. It's not like somebody's telling you, invest in this business, and in the end, you may get X and Y. This is a prophet of Allah who's telling you that invest in this, take my hand and get on this journey with me. And I assure you that this is the last message that I have that Allah is telling me to leave with my Jamaat. And I'm going. And when I go, there's guaranteed success for you and for this entire Jamaat, that when a Prophet of Allah comes, Allah Ta'ala deliberately takes him away without showing all the success because he wants to manifest his power again. So if this is that success that the Prophet of Allah is telling you, you don't have to worry about too much, right? The roadmap is already set for you. Pray on it. You pray that Allah gives you the ability, because again, it's not about, you don't just get up and say, like Murabi Sahib was saying, or Secretary Sahib was saying, you want to go into war, that I'll just go and fight. It's not up to you sometimes. It's Allah Ta'ala gives you that tawfiq. Sometimes He opens up your heart. Sometimes He inspires you. So that's where the prayer comes in and the sincerity. When Allah holds your hand and He opens your heart, then you don't have to worry about anything. But Hazur administratively has given us also this answer, that if that time was to come, there is that possibility for someone to say, honestly, right now I have nothing, for them to cancel their wasiyah and then do it again when they're able to. But again, no one prays for that. But the Jamaat also gives that opportunity in case it does come.
Jazakallah Sir for bringing that up. And this is written in the Holy Quran that Shaitan does instill fear, right? Shaitan threatens us with poverty. And Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah that Allah Ta'ala promises forgiveness and bounty. So this is natural that we have these thoughts and these fears, but then the reward is more as well, right? When we overcome the fear, we trust in Allah Ta'ala, the reward is more. It reminds me of this hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ when one of the companions asked that, O Prophet of Allah, which charity has the most reward? And the Holy Prophet ﷺ responded that, when you give charity, when you are healthy and miserly, fearing poverty and hoping to become rich, that's when you give charity, and that's when you get the reward of Allah Ta'ala. You have this desire to become rich. You fear that I may become poor, but yet you come forward and trust in Allah Ta'ala, and then Allah Ta'ala promises bounties. And inshallah, when we get to the stories, we're gonna hear some stories where how Allah Ta'ala fulfills this promise day in, day out for the members who have experienced them. So I hope that satisfies the concern that some members have with this particular hesitation. All right, moving on to the next one. Marisa, this is another common one. Some members just say, okay, well, Wasiyyat was not made mandatory by Hazrat Masih Islam, right? It is not, it's an optional thing. It's not a first thing in Islam. So what's the response to that?
Yeah, it's definitely not fardz. There's no doubt about it. But there also we see that it's something that's encouraged, and particularly in every khilafat, there are certain things that are emphasized. And so when Huzur Yadaullah has emphasized wasiyat, particularly as the need of this time, then that's something where if we stay back or we get left out of it, then there's a different and new type of danger that we put ourselves in. So, of course, there are many things that are voluntary, but then they take on a more obligatory nature in certain times. We see even jihad is something that's mentioned in the Holy Quran, and there are certain times when people had excuses and genuine excuses, but there were certain battles, there were certain jihads when everybody was told to come along. And those people who didn't come along, then at that particular time, then it was very blameworthy in the sight of Allah Almighty. So the commandment of jihad didn't change, but its emphasis and importance, it shifted in different eras and different times. So I think in this particular era, especially when we see the situation that the world is in, when a catastrophe happens, when these things happen, then it becomes very difficult to offer anything after that point. When a person has nothing, then what are they going to offer at all? So here, there are many interpretations we can have. I think one interpretation we can take is that Huzur has given us an opportunity that before the coming of this world war, that whoever is going to get onto this train, whoever is going to get up to that standard where they would be in the special grace of Allah Ta'ala, which al-Wasiyyat has been established to do, then now is the time to get on it. Now is the time to become a part of that nizam. And it's almost as if it is a last call that is being given, that this is a last call, join that nizam, join it when now it is particularly easy, relatively easy to make these sacrifices. Because once the world changes and everything changes, then it may be difficult at that point. So this is, in a way, an opportunity before the punishment comes. There are Ahmadis who accepted Ahmadiyyat after the punishment came, after the Ta'un came, and they were known as Ta'uni Ahmadis, because they had accepted after the punishment came, after the destruction out of fear and those types of things. So also, I think there will be a sort of distinction. With the Wasiyyat numbers, you also have an order that those who join earlier, they have an earlier number. Those who join later, they have a later number. There may come a time decades from now where those Ahmadis who joined early on, before that catastrophe, before that war, that they would have a special distinction in the way that even those people who are in Daftar Awal of Tariq-e-Jadid, they have a certain distinction as well. So I think one way of looking at it is in this way, that of course it is not farz, it is not obligatory, but in considering the situation in the world, we should look at it as if Huzur is giving us a last call, that now is the time to get to a higher standard, to join Wasiyyat, and to get onto that special train or that special thing that Hazrat Masih Maud created, that Kishti Anu. And then afterwards, Allah knows best what will happen, what opportunities we'll have after that.
When we look at even the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were different kinds of Sahaba, right? There were those who, we know the narration of the man who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Just tell me the bare minimum. Don't give me any extras. How many prayers do I have to pray? That's it. Don't tell me more." They were just treading along the edges. They didn't want to be a part of the big Sahaba doing the big things, right? So this Jamaat of Hazrat Masih Salam is huge. I mean, you find all kinds of Ahmadis, and every Ahmadi has a place. depending on where you want to fix yourself, right? There is a narration of actually a friend of mine who in the UK, he wasn't a very active Ahmadi. He was when it comes to soccer, he will always play soccer. But then one time he came for Fajr, Batul Masjid Fazl. So our Muhtamis Sayyid Jismani at that time, he had a mulaqat and he mentioned this person that Huzur, we wanted to add this guy to the team. He's very particular about soccer, but when it comes to namaz, he's very lazy. And Huzur asked about this gentleman. Huzur knew his father. And he said to him, go and tell him that I know his father. His father was someone who, when it comes to spiritual knowledge, he wasn't the most, but he was very brave. That if Ahmadiyyat was ever at risk, I would call him. I would not call Abu Atta Jalandhari. So again, everyone has a position. And when that opportunity is open for you, you either take it or you don't. So when someone then puts themselves forward and they give that extra sacrifice, then there is a special place for you. But if you want to stay back and just take the bare minimum, eat from the crumbs, there's a position for you too. Wasiyyat is one of those that it's an open call, is that it's not obligatory, but then don't wait for something to be mandated upon you. Only then and only then would you do it. Then what's your part in the victory of Islam Ahmadiyyat? What's your part when, Allah Ta'ala mentioned in the Holy Quran that every prophet will stand and become a witness to their people? Right? The Holy Prophet ﷺ will come and call his ummah. Where will you be when Hazrat Masih ﷺ is calling the list of people who came forward? You'll be somewhere back in the line. No one wants that. But if you're satisfied with that, that's okay. But the truth is that this opportunity that the Prophet of the time has given us is an open call, but it's up to you to take it. If Allah Ta'ala, again, if Allah gives you the opportunity, don't always think that it's on me only. Sometimes it's Allah that gives you that opportunity. And if it doesn't, you may not see the light at the end of that tunnel, as it may sound obvious. So I would say that I don't want to mention it this way, but it's almost like a point of concern. That when something is mentioned so clearly by a prophet of Allah, and I'm not able to see the wisdom in it, quote unquote, I'm not able to see the light, that I should perhaps pray more for Allah Ta'ala to open my heart so I can see the same way that others are talking so marvelously about it.
Also, there's a Hadith Qudsi that when my servant comes to me and offers nawafil, Allah Ta'ala says that I start loving that, my servant, and I become his hands, his eyes, his ears, right? So there is farz and there is nawafil, right? Khalifa Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala once in one of his Friday sermons, he expanded that, fries, if you're just doing bare minimum, as you just mentioned, right? That's like a skeleton, right? So you're bare bones, right? But then when you do nawafil and you go above and beyond, that's when you start to draw Allah Ta'ala's loving gaze. That's when you draw, because then that's where on that skeleton you start to put flesh and skin and you become beautiful. And then Allah Ta'ala, we all like, beautiful things. So Allah Ta'ala obviously, will like us as well when we have beauty in us. So that nawafil, or that, getting into this conversation of what is mandatory, what is optional, like you mentioned, this is that opportunity to offer something above and beyond to Allah Ta'ala, to really, earn that distinction in the sight of Allah Ta'ala. And the other thing, when I look at this question, yes, wasiyat is optional, but then let's also remind ourselves that is fulfilling your pledge and keeping, fulfilling your promises, is that also optional in Islam or not? That is mandatory, right? That is something that we are supposed to do. So when we look at the 10 conditions of Bai'at, and in the 8th condition of Bai'at, we read that we will hold Islam, the honor of Islam, the cause of Islam dearer to us than our lives, our children, everything, right? Then how are we going to be able to fulfill that promise and pledge when the world around us, these enemies of Islam, like so Miriam Edelson, they're pumping billions of dollars in promoting Islamophobia. That's the enemy against us. And the Prophet of the time has told us that the response to that in this day and age is to also respond with the same, financial sacrifice. So we can also give our money and wealth collectively, so that, through this nizam, we also respond to the allegations and to this enemy Islam, the kind of weapons they're using. We also need to use the same weapons. The 10th condition of Bai'at says that I will get into the bond of this obedience and brotherhood with the Prophet ﷺ, the like of which is nowhere to be found in any other relationship. So when the Prophet of Allah is telling us that this is my commandment. Because I literally read the words. उर्दू में हजूर ने फरमाया कि मेरा हुक्म की जो तामील करेगा. English में है those who will show how well they carried out my command. They alone are the true believers in the sight of Allah Ta'ala, and they will set a seal on their faithfulness. What else are we, what else are we waiting for? The Prophet of the time is giving us a commandment, and if we pledge in the 10th condition of that we love him more dear than anything else, then this becomes a must. That's the kind of perspective we need to look at this with. And again, at the end of the day, we have choices. I mean, we have choices in our daily lives as well. It's optional for us to go to college. It's optional for us to, apply for a job. It's optional for us when we start earning the money. It's optional for us to, either open up a retirement or savings account or we don't, right? But we all do because we know that with that investment, we increase the likelihood of our, financial stability, our livelihood, our prosperity, and we all invest in that. And now, when the time comes about the investment in the hereafter, this is just a pre-life. The real life lies ahead. What investments have you made for that life, right? It's optional, but the question is that is it really optional, right? When you're really concerned about that hereafter, and your Jannah and the ultimate pleasure of Allah Ta'ala. So, Jazakallah for those thoughts. I want to take a couple of more, Marbisa, before we move on to the next segment. This is an important question. Some members say that they are already giving in charity in their personal capacities. They help their family members. Some have underprivileged family members back home. They help them as well, support them. So then, if with doing all that, is it still necessary for them to participate in Nizam Wasiyyat?
So Nizam Wasiyyat has a particular purpose. It has an objective that it's there for. So to help our family members, that's a different type of thing that's described in the Holy Quran as well, that we should support those who are our close relatives. Then there's also helping the poor. That's a type of sadaqah. But Wasiyyat is not a type of sadaqah or any of those things. It's something that's there for the establishment and promotion of Islam. It is there to support an organization that was started by the promised Messiah, a movement that was started by him with a specific prophetic objective. So where a person is spending for the sake of Allah Almighty on an individual level, then it's something that has a very limited scope. Any non-Ahmadi Muslim can do that. Even Christians, Jews do that. Even atheists do that, where they give in charity, they help the poor, they try and help and support people up until their capacity. They help an organization that they believe in and they think that this organization has a good vision. So wherever we donate to an organization, we do it according to their vision. When we help our family members or poor people, we try to help a little bit those people who are close to us. But in Wasiyyat, it's fundamentally different because there we are contributing and participating in a movement, in a vision that was started by the promised Messiah salam, and that has objectives that were defined by Allah Almighty. And then it is implemented under the guidance of Khilafat, a living Khilafat. So that is the difference. So I think there, the people who ask that question, perhaps it has not become clear to them yet what the purpose of Wasiyyat is, what's written in Risala al-Wasiyyat, and how the Khulafa have explained how the funds of Wasiyyat are meant to be spent in accordance with the guidance of the promised Messiah salam. And when a person sees that, then they would understand that this is very different from the sadaqah that they give separately. Sadaqah, of course, is something that's good, but it's an entirely different category.
Yeah, I think, like we were mentioning earlier, that by just reading Risala al-Wasiyyat, a lot of these questions we can find answered. And, it's like nowadays our youngsters talk a lot about, I want to donate to Gaza, what's the Jamaat doing to help the poor people in these, the children in these poor countries. And sometimes it's because we may not be very closely involved and we may not see what the Jamaat is doing. So this same question that this person wants to help the poor and the needy, just think of multiplying that million X, right, of what the Jamaat as an organization is doing. So Hazrat Masih mentions this himself in Risala al-Wasiyyat to mention that how these funds would be used. And just one line, he says, these funds should also be used to help such orphans, poor and needy people, and new converts as do not have sufficient means of livelihood. And it shall be permissible to augment these funds through trade and commerce. Do not think that these things which I have said are inconceivable. No, they are the will of that mighty one who is the Lord of the earth and the heaven. I'm not worried how these funds will be collected, nor do I grieve over how such a Jamaat will be raised, who, inspired by their faith, shall perform such heroic feats. Rather, I'm worried that after I'm gone, those who will be entrusted with these funds may not, seeing their abundance, stumble and fall in love with the world. So again, there are two things mentioned here. First of all, this is being answered by Hazrat Masih Maud that question that person has, Wasiyyat also covers that. Number two, if someone doesn't give or they don't join Nizam and Wasiyyat, don't get this wrong. As the Masih is saying that Allah Ta'ala has promised me, we will not lack the people that will come forward. We will not lack these funds coming in. It's that they will come in such abundance that I'm worried, will we have enough people who will be able to execute these things in the way that Allah Ta'ala has wanted me to do it? So the question needs to shift, right? Is a question of, do I become a part of this or not? If you think helping one or two people in the village that you came from is more purposeful, just in your thoughts, so that's what you think is more relevant at this point in your life, may Allah open your eyes to see the bigger vision. But we need to understand that we are part of this is a global institution that the Muslim has set. The creator of it is Allah Ta'ala himself. The vast nature of it is something that, as Muslim said, that we can't even conceive of it. So think of it that way instead of just a small thing that, however it is. But that's the purpose of the webinar. Again, not to beat anyone down, but just to make us understand that the more we go back to that book and we read it ourselves, all these questions will be answered, inshallah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful answer, Jazakallah, to both of you. Understanding the purpose and grandeur of this prophetic Nizam. And, as a Muslim, who actually further expanded in Nizam now in his book, The New World Order, that this will one day will become the world order, the new world order, right? So the whole economic system will be based on this. So this is not an ordinary Nizam. And the second point I want to add to that is that we're focusing on the financial aspect, but Nizam-e-Wasiyyat, as we established earlier, is that letter for our own spiritual reformation as well, and it serves as a catalyst and accelerator for our spiritual growth, right? So, Hazrat Khamis had mentioned that it accelerates a journey of years into months and months to days. So that's the other element and the prayers of the Prophet ﷺ, if you read the book, he has repeatedly, again and again and again prayed for those who become part of this blessed Nizam. So if you want to, if you want to become the recipients of those prayers, we must join. Otherwise, we'll be deprived of those prayers as well. So I want to take one more before we move on to the next segment. And this is, I'm going to come to Murbi Abdullah Dibba Sahab, because this is mostly a question from Khudam. They say that right now I have no money. I'll join Wasiyyat after I start earning or after I graduate or after I get married. So they're kind of pushing it out because they're like, well, right now we have no money and we don't have stability in our life right now.
Again, coming back to understanding at the time of the Masih Maud, I'll just give you an example. When we were in Qadian, this is just how the Prophet ﷺ himself understood his mission. When he used to write his first books, the Jamaat at that time didn't have a press. As the Masih himself would write with his own hands. And then in order to get that made into a book form, he would put all those manuscripts together and he would walk on foot and he would hold those manuscripts together. He wouldn't even send any of his companions. He would walk on foot and travel long distances. He would sit on a horse cart. He would travel and get on the train. It would take him days. He would go all the way to Batala and he would sit and wait for that to be prepared in the form of a book. He would literally sit there and wait, and they would give all of that to him. He would walk miles. This is someone that Allah Ta'ala has told him himself that I've guaranteed you success already, but this was the work that he put in. When he needed to print his books, he would take loans. This is how poor those companions were who were doing Wasiyyat. He would take loans and then say, I'll pay you back. One time, Hazrat Masih needed some money. He even told Hazrat Ammajan to lend him money, and he wrote it down in a contract and said, I'll pay you back in 4 years. And they wrote it down and signed it with witnesses. This was how poor the Jamaat was. These were the people that answered the call of Wasiyyat, because they saw it as you mentioned, Sekri Saab, it's a spiritual journey. It's not about the penny that you put in. It's not about the dollar that you put in. It's about understanding the mission at hand. It's about answering a call and Allah Ta'ala giving you the opportunity to believe in this. The Sahaba who were given zakat, some of them were giving dates, one date. And then hypocrites would come and see them and say, look at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his people. He's promising them that they're going to be victorious over Persia. And these are the people that are going to contribute for that victory. They're giving 1 date and 2 dates. They were laughing at them. But the spirit is what counted. So if you're sitting here because you don't have a job right now, or you're making $10 an hour, it doesn't matter. You step forward, and it's with this that Allah Ta'ala will bless you. Don't worry about the paycheck. Don't worry about it's Wasiyyat is not to say when you earn X amount, that's when you pay. No, it's whatever you have, even if you're a student, and you pay out of what Allah Ta'ala has provided for you. That's what spending in the way of Allah is. You spend out of what you believe Allah Ta'ala has given you. If that's $1, you give out of that. If that's 2 cents, you give out of that.
Jazakallah, Jazakallah. And Nur Sahib, just so that all of the, if there are Khaddam and Lajna listening who are young, just so they know, we have clear answer from Hazur on the minimum age to join Wasiyah. So Hazur has expanded that, once you turn 15, you can move forward, join Nizam-e Wasiyat, and once you turn to the age of 18, you can reaffirm your commitment. So there's a lot of blessing in joining early. I mean, we even from the childhood, we've been hearing this phrase that early bird catches the worm, right? I mean, there's a lot of blessing in being the first one, right? And first to be at the mosque, first to be being at the to Jummah, and there's literally no reason to delay this. I mean, I know of a story of a khadim. So it's a you know the story as well, that there was a khadim who signed up for his wasiyat, and he had chosen that I want to make this binding from the date of writing. And a few months down the road, he passed away in an accident. And Huzur Anwar, we wrote to Huzur that Huzur, his wasiyat is still pending, it's not approved. And Huzur graciously approved it, and he was buried in the Maqbara Musian. So we don't know about life when it ends, and we don't even know about tomorrow. So there's absolutely no reason to wait. Say labbaik to the call of the Prophet. The sooner we say labbaik, the more reward we get. There's a verse of the Holy Quran that those Sahaba who accept Islam after Fatah Makkah are not the same as the ones who did it before. Like I said earlier, one day this is going to become a Nizam-e-Nau. This is going to be the new world order. Everybody will be participating in this one way or the other, with choice or no choice, right? The blessing is now when we have minority, and this is the way we collectively, um, defend Islam in this day and age through this kind of jihad. So, Jazakallah. Um, Now we're actually gonna move on to the other segment where we're gonna bring in Masood Khan Sahib as well in the panels. Masood Khan Sahib is currently serving as the National Mawin Sadr Wasaya for in Majlis Ansarullah, National Ansarullah. And Masood Sahib, Jazakallah for joining us. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakallah, Masood bhai, for patiently waiting. So now in this segment, like I said earlier, we want to open it up to the members, attendees as well, who are listening to this webinar. If you want to share your inspirational story, but I do want to highlight and state this, that please, keep it to something very short, something a story, not a comment in a way, because we have other opportunities. If you have a particular question about Wasiyyat, you can send us an email at help desk, that the link has been shared with all of you. But the purpose of this particular segment right now is to really collectively hear and get inspired through these motivational stories that members have experienced. So I want to start off with Masood Khan Sahib. Masood Khan Sahib, you've been, mashallah, serving as Mawin Sadr Wasaya National and Majlis Ansarullah. You must have met many Ansar. Uh, is there anything inspirational that came across and you would want to share with us?
Ji, Jazakallah, National Secretary Sahib. I wanted to share stories of a couple of individuals. The first one is this gentleman. He was married. He was working, but financially his situation wasn't good enough where he could move out. He was still living with his parents, and he fell into a lot of the societal ills. and he felt like his life was kind of falling apart with his marriage, with his family. You know, he was struggling at work, and at times he felt like Allah Ta'ala was punishing him in this world. And he came across a Musi who told him the story, and he was very inspired and how Wasiyyat saved his life. So he wanted to try it himself because he did not like where his life was headed. So he decided to join Nizami Wasiyyat right there and then. And very soon after, he felt like he had a spiritual change, and he wasn't he didn't have desire to indulge in the activities that he previously was involved in. He was able to save his marriage. His relationship with his family improved. He was able to purchase a home and move out of his parents' house. His income got better, and he said that one of the best things that for him it was, and it brings him joy every month when he sends his obligatory chandajat, that every month his obligatory chandajat are more than what his 3 months worth of income was before he joined Nizami Wasiyat. So that's what, like he said, those are the blessings that he thinks about every single time he's paying his obligatory chandajat. The second individual that I wanted to talk about was he's a husband. You know, he's got family, he's got children. Like many of us, you know, he's working hard, trying to provide financial stability to his family and his future. His wife is a Musia and would occasionally bring up the conversation that he needs to join Nizami Wasiyat. And his response would be, when my heart is convinced, I will join. But years went by. You know, at times he was working multiple jobs, working hard, and but things didn't change for him. And one day he woke up in the morning and he was 100% with 100% conviction that I'm going to join Nizami Wasiyat. And while he was getting ready for work, he told his wife that he has decided that he's going to join Nizami Wasiyat. And he expected her to be extremely excited, but she gave her a very calm reply that my prayers have been answered. And on the way out, he stopped at his mailbox. He got an envelope from National Wasaya Department. He opened the envelope. There was a Wasiyat application with a letter inviting him to join Nizami Wasiyat. He filled out that application the same day and started the process of Wasiyat. Over the years, he saw his life changing, not only financially but spiritually as well. Financially, he was able to improve the life of his family. He purchased a home. He was renting at the time. His income grew, but that's not even the main thing that he consider. I mean, he considers that a blessing, but the main blessing that he considers is he feel his prayers. He's more regular in his prayers. He feels spiritually closer to Allah Ta'ala, and he sees that in his children as well. Because whatever he has in this world is going to stay behind. But what he's done for afterlife and what he's going to leave behind with his children, he sees all that. For many years, you know, he was working hard, multiple jobs, and he tried to force his future into something that wasn't working. But once he submitted to the will of Allah Ta'ala and answered the call of Imam of the age, everything started to fall in place for him. So these are a couple of things that I want. And of course, there's so many Khuddam and Ansar that we talk to, and there's so many different stories. And it's just a huge blessing that we see in many people. It's very inspiring.
Every Musi has a story. I have a firm belief that every Musi has a story. And that's why, we mashallah have over 200 participants. If you want to, share your story quickly, how Wasiyat transformed your life, what blessings have you witnessed and experienced, we would love to hear from you. So if you do want to share, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Harun bhai, do we have any raised hands at the moment?
Ji, Secretary Sahab, none at the moment.
Okay. So yeah, please let us know if you wanna. Okay, I see one.
Ji, let me unmute that.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I am a Musi, alhamdulillah. But I have a story of my father that I would like to, my late father, that I would like to tell. And this story actually was told by missionary Anamul Haq Kausar Sahab. He was a young missionary at that time in Daska, Sialkot, I believe probably one of his first appointments. And he knew my dad, who was very young at that time, married. He was very active in Jamaat, in Tabligh. And so missionary Inamullah Kosas, I was trying to convince my dad to join the Wasiyyat. And my dad said a lot of the things that you just mentioned, that I don't know if I'm spiritually there, if I don't know, I'm worthy of doing Wasiyyat. And Kosar Sahib told him that you should join, and on the day of judgment, I'll vouch for you that you are worthy and you have all those qualities that should be in a Musi. And after a lot of going back and forth, he joined. He was very young. Not in his 20s, but he was like 33 years old or 34 years old. So he joined, alhamdulillah. And when he was 35, he was martyred and he passed away. So, and he was buried in the Bhishti Maqbara, one of the early, sites of Bhishti Maqbara. And Kausar Saab tells us that he went to his grave and he was standing by his grave and he said, "Here I am. I was supposed to vouch for you, for your, to Allah Ta'ala, that you were worthy of worship and you were worthy of doing Wasiyyat. And here I am standing here and you're laying down here." And so I believe that the time, we should not waste any time. Allah Ta'ala knows when the call comes. And if we leave as a Musi, then we have a promise from Allah the Almighty that, we will be resting in a better place, inshallah ta'ala.
Jazakallah, Asal Jazak Tayyibah for sharing that story. Jazakallah. Zain Kareem Sahab.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I didn't realize you'd be able to share, so apologies that it's not like super well prepared. But before, one of the speakers mentioned how, people say like they're like not ready to join because like maybe they're really young or something, they're not financially stable. So I want to share that that specifically you had mentioned that there was a young boy who had applied, but then he had passed away just a few months later, and his Wasiyyat application hadn't been approved yet at that time. But when you apply for Wasiyyat, and maybe not everyone will know, but when you apply, you have to put whether you want it to be active from when you submit your application, or if you want it to be active from when your application is actually accepted. And it does have like a warning on there saying that if you put for it only to be accepted from, or for it only to be active from when it's actually accepted, then if for some reason you pass away before the form is accepted, then you would not be a Musi. And so I feel like that's just something really important to keep in mind, just always that you never know what can happen. Maybe it would seem like, what are the chances that I pass away before this form is accepted? And so my father, may Allah have mercy on him, alhamdulillah, he applied for Wasiyyat, and he put on there for it to be active from the time of writing. And inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun, he was martyred when he was 33 years old, which that is relatively young. It's basically kind of like your life is still starting in a way. And but because he had put for it to be accepted from time of, for it to be, sorry, to be active from time of writing, alhamdulillah, he was buried in the Maqbara Musyan in Chicago. So I guess like I'm just sharing this in case anyone thinks like, like you're really young, like something like you're thinking that you'll always have time to do this later on. Like you don't know if you will have time to do it later on, and you don't even know like if you will have that time between when you submit your application and when it's actually accepted. So I would encourage everyone, if you're hesitant at all, to do it and to have it active from right when you submit your application. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Jazakallah. It was very helpful. Jazakallah for those that guidance. Rabbi Abdullah Dibba Sahab, so Sahudanandia, you've been visiting Majalis for the past few years now. MashaAllah, you've come across many Khuddam. We would love to hear from you that, what stories have you heard from Khuddam who've, MashaAllah, taken this step forward and have embarked on this journey?
Yeah, I think it's really important, again, just to have these webinars. And you can see that sometimes just by having a conversation with someone, whether it's a letter they open or just talking to them. One of the most interesting ones was I was in Houston, and as I was doing wudu, and I stepped out of the bathroom, and there was a khadim who was just about to go in. For some reason, I just asked him, "Are you a Musi?" He said, "No." And I was like, "Have you thought about it?" And he paused for a second. He said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So it's just that no one really directly approached him. And as soon as we just had that two, and I said, "Well, do you mean it?" And I gave him a quick breakdown. He said, "Yeah, absolutely. I would just do it." So it was just so simple that I was stunned that, wow, I thought this was going to need some convincing. So there are many pure hearts that sometimes we just need to have that conversation. But more from an experience point of view, towards the end of last year, I was in one of the trips. Many of you know that Khuddam have been going on trips. There was this particular khadim there who I realized that almost whenever we were doing dua or during conversations, and he would just break down. He would just start crying. And I didn't know him to be like that because I know him personally. So, at some point I asked him, "Hey, what's going on?" It's like, "Look, I've just realized just by praying every day behind Huzur and seeing all these dedicated servants of Ahmadiyyat that there's more to Ahmadiyya than just what I thought it was back in the Midwest where I come from." And it's almost like I'm in heaven. It's like I was very worried before I came on this trip. So his company was just recently acquired, and they all knew almost certainly that by January 2026, majority of them were to get laid off. So he was already worried about that, finances, family. But when he came on that trip, he was telling me that I was able to just say, "You know what? Forget all of that. I'm living life. I'm enjoying this." But before he came on the trip, he signed for Wasiyyat and he submitted it and he went on that trip. So I could see visibly that he was just appreciating the fact that Allah Ta'ala was giving him ease and he was able to forget all his concerns behind, and now he's in the presence of Khalifatul Masih. So fast forward, we get back on the trip, and in December, just a month or so later, he sends me testimony of the fact that in January, we were sure that almost everyone was going to get laid off. But I got a call from a senior member of my company who actually offered me to say, "If you stay in this job until August, we'll give you a significant increase." So where everyone was getting laid off, not only did he get retained, but he was paid to get retained, and he was going to get a significant bonus. But again, that's because number one, he joined Wasiyat, and number two, all the things that he was worried about, he literally left it in the hands of Allah and said, "There's more to life than just worrying about my concerns." Allah Ta'ala removed those concerns and gave him success.
Jazakallah, Jazakallah, Sasa, for sharing that. In the beginning of the webinar, we had said that we will offer some food for thought for Musian as well. So, in the spirit of that, there's one story that I have come across. A Khadim shared with me. He was a Musi, right? And as soon as he heard back in 2004 that Hazur had asked to sail back to Wasiyat, he jumped in. He was very young, 17, 18 years old. He loved his Khalifa. He jumped in. He kind of didn't have a plan at that time that what is he getting into. And then right after he got married, um, he got, burdened with financial responsibilities, and he was not able to manage his finances well, and he was under a lot of debt and loans, and he was struggling. And during that time, weakness of faith, he just kind of fell behind in terms of commitment of paying his Chanda Wasiyat, right? And it happened for years, and he was just getting buried under that debt more and more. He had to do two jobs, he was telling me, and um, he was extremely worried that, how am I gonna get out of this thing? And he was talking to his brother one day, and his brother was Musi as well, and his brother was telling him, Alhamdulillah, everything was perfect. I've been getting bonuses, and but he was also sharing with him that how he's been contributing to Wasiyat, and he's also been thinking about, his sajadat. So then that's when it clicked to this khadim that there's something wrong that I'm doing. Allah Ta'ala promises that, Allah Ta'ala blesses you with, multiplies your wealth, and I'm a Musi, but why am I, stuck in this? And I realized the moment of reflection, right, that I'm not being true to Allah Ta'ala. Right? I'm a Musi, but I'm not fulfilling the commitment that I have. And so he pledged himself. He was telling me that from that day on, I'm gonna to the cent calculate my income, right? I'm gonna pay, and no matter what happens, right? How hard my financial situation is, I need to be, true to Allah Ta'ala and fulfill my commitment. And he said that as soon as he started doing that, it was miraculously, he was um, helped by Allah Ta'ala. He was, his financial difficulty was burden was eased. He got a better job, and then from there on, and literally he was showing me that, it was just exponential from that day. Every year after year, and mashallah, he's back on track and has been blessed with so much. So, it's a moment of reflection for all of us as well, being a Musi, that, it's one thing to step forward and commit. Absolutely, the first step that is needed. But at the same time, constantly reflecting that are we fulfilling the commitment, right? Financial uh, pledge that we have made, that we're gonna pay a certain amount. Are we truly fulfilling that commitment? As well as, very recently, Hazur Anwar mentioned in one of the mulakats to one of the Amlajat that, just paying 1/10 alone also is not going to get us to the pleasure of Allah Ta'ala Jannat, right? We have to, there are other aspects of wasiyat as well. Are we growing in taqwa? Are we growing in spirituality? Are we, you know, fulfilling the obligation of salat and Quran and all that? So, something to keep in mind. So, we're coming to the close of the webinar now. I toward the end, I just want to kind of take it home now, and I have three call to actions for all of us who are listening today. So, number one is a call to action for all of those brothers and sisters who are on the call, who have yet to take that step forward, who have yet to become a Musi. Please prioritize reading the book Al Wasiyat. Prioritize it without any further delay. Read the book, ponder on the words of the Prophet of Allah Ta'ala, pray to Allah Ta'ala, and move forward. That's number one, call to action. Call to action number two, to all of the Musian who are listening to me, let's all ponder over our current commitment, level of commitment that we have. We have our obligations as a Musi. Are we fulfilling the obligations, and where are we, in terms of fulfilling those obligations? And number three, to all Musian, we have an added obligation and responsibility to now go and spread the word and bring others to the fold of Wasiyat as well, who have not yet joined Wasiyat, because the blessings that we've been experiencing, through Allah Ta'ala's mercy, we want to share those blessings with our brothers and sisters as well. So start with your families. Start with your family. This is the message that we've been repeatedly hearing from respected Amir Saab, respected Missionary in Charge Saab at the Jalsa Salana speech last year. He had asked all of us to just focus on our own families, right? And start with that, and bring, deliver this message, invite them to join towards this blessed scheme for their own benefit, and for the benefit of the generations to come. There's also in the will itself, Hazrat Masih Islam actually wrote that, those who have now read this, they should promote this to their friends. So it's an ask from, Hazrat Masih Islam himself gave us that order and commandment to take this message further. And as a matter of fact, in Malfuzat, once I read that Hazur had said that is wasiyat ki takmeel mein meri madad, mera haath batao. That, in fulfillment of this wasiyat, lend me your hand. So we have that extra obligation as well. So those are the three asks that I had as call to action for all of us. I hope this was informative. May Allah Ta'ala bless us. May Allah Ta'ala continue for us to reflect on where we are and what the expectations are of Khalifatul Masih from us, and may Allah Ta'ala enable us to continue marching forward with motivation and vigor. So